Hi, this is Paul Berkobin with Elk Spring Education, your place for real estate and financial know-how. And today we're doing an Elk Spring tidbit on the homeownership process, and in particular looking at ways to reduce the amount of cash needed to get into a home. So, there's a lot of reasons to consider reducing cash needed. One of them could be if you don't have a lot of cash, right? And that's really important for many first-time buyers, for example, who are really pursuing the dream of home ownership, but then are also feeling like, wow, I got to save all this money, and feeling stuck with that. And so for a lot of those folks, that can be a great reason to reduce the cash needed. But reducing cash needed to own a home can also be smart for folks with significant assets, and that can be true because of things like the alternative investment rate. Can you use your money elsewhere more intelligently than tying it up in real estate? Or, for example, using money to pay off debt instead of put down on a home. There's a lot of reasons that cash might be useful elsewhere. Starting a business, doing other things with your family, or whatever those cash needs are. So for many people, the idea of reducing the cash needed to own a home is an appealing one. And particularly that's true maybe more than ever when rates are at low levels or at affordable levels. So all those are reasons why reducing cash can be smart. And I think, to go back to the first point, that for folks who are renting and who want to own, who are trying to get out of renting and into home ownership, it's really super important to know about this, because this is often one of the places where people feel an obstacle that's more a myth. It's more of a perceived obstacle than a real one. And part of the reason why it's difficult for many people to get out of rent and into home ownership is, when you're renting, you don't have the tax write-offs of home ownership, so you pay more in income taxes. And generally, as long as there's some amount of inflation in the economy, if your salary is not increasing faster than inflation, then it's harder to save. And you also lose out on appreciation the longer that you wait, because if you're in an area where homes are appreciating in value every year, the values go up, and unless you're earning more than that appreciation, then you're sort of falling behind on that curve. And for many people, because homes appreciate based on the value of the real estate, the value in dollars is higher than what they would make in a raise, for example. So there's a lot of reasons, if you're somebody who's renting and thinking about owning, being empowered and knowing about how to get into homeownership sooner, if you think that the need of cash is an obstacle, is a super important thing. So financialpro.info is a URL here. When we finish this tidbit, I'm going to ask you to just go there real quick and leave 2 quick pieces of feedback on this tidbit. Take just a second or two. There's some things that you can request there as well. But I do want to say that if you type in one of those boxes, no PMI, no private mortgage insurance, there's a really cool report we have about how you can put less than 20% down and never pay private mortgage insurance, which is a great thing to know. It's not a part of the scope of this tidbit, but if you just write in no PMI in one of those boxes, we'll send you that report for free. So anyway, looking at ways of reducing cash. Now watch, this is for educational purposes only, and so a really important thing to know is that before you make any decisions about mortgage programs, price ranges, so on and so forth, you should consult with a great consulting lender who's licensed in the area where you're looking for real estate. So again, take this for the sake of education. And we're using in this example a hypothetical $140,000 home, which in some parts of the country buys a palace, and in other parts it buys nothing whatsoever. But again, take it for the concept, okay? So what I just want to show you here in this chart is basically that if you went into any lender, any mortgage lender in the country, and you said, hey, I'm trying to buy a home and I don't want to put a lot of money down, what can you do? Everybody has what's in the first column, which is the plain vanilla column, and that's a 5% down loan. So everyone has that. The interesting thing to know is that on a $140,000 purchase, if you put 5% down, it's $7,000. But if you look at the other cash needed, which is the closing costs and the prepaids, it totals $14,000, which is really more like 10%. Now, this will vary by state and location, so again, take it as an example. But what I want to say is that when you have a certain amount down, you also have to add whatever the closing costs are, and you have to add whatever the prepaids are. And prepaids, so you know, are things that you would owe anyway while you own the home, but they're just things you have to pay up front to get things started. So that's like paying the first year's real estate taxes or the first year's homeowner's insurance. They're things that are needed at closing. So when you add all that up, usually the amount needed is even more than the amount down, and that's a place where a lot of people get stuck. Now, there are ways to reduce the cash needed, and one of them is a seller credit. Seller credits are hard to do in a competitive market, but if you're not in competition for a home, it often works. A seller credit's a way of adding closing costs to the purchase price and then financing them. So with a seller credit, you add closing costs to purchase price, essentially, and then finance them. So it's a way of reducing the cash needed. Again, it doesn't work in competitive markets, but if you're not in competition on the home, many times it will. And this would be something to discuss with your buyer's agent, who's the expert in the area where you're working. As you can see, though, in our hypothetical example, a seller credit can reduce the cash from 14 to 9 grand, which is a lot better. But moving across the chart, what I want to point out is there are some other kinds of financing out there that reduce the amount of cash needed significantly. And where a lot of people get stuck is they may go to a bank and say, hey, I don't have a lot of money down, or they go to a mortgage lender and they just hear the plain vanilla column and not the other stuff, and then they think, there's no way, I don't have the money. But there really are all kinds of programs out there that allow for lower money down, and these are just a couple. It's not everything, it's just a couple for illustration. So FHA, in the middle column here, is one that is commonly used in many parts of the country. It's a great loan, and you can see that with 3.5% down, the amount needed is much lower. Closing costs and prepaids are similar, but look at the amount of seller credit you can get. It's much, much higher on an FHA loan. And basically, on an FHA loan, you can get to true 3.5%. That's all you need. So that's pretty cool. And moving along then to the FMHA, or this is also a USDA loan that works in some parts of the country. This is a 0 down, and obviously 0 is less than 3.5 or 5, so that's helpful. Closing costs and prepaids are similar. Prepaids just a little bit more, but not too different. But check this out. You can actually put 0 down and put everything with seller credit to cover the 100% of the costs. And basically, in theory, you need no cash. So, if you got 20 bucks, you can buy a house, cash-wise. Now again, these are programs for illustration. There are different versions of these ideas. There's conventional 3% down loans. There's first plus seconds, with 100% financing, and so on and so forth. This is not an all-inclusive list. But the purpose of this chart is to show you that there really are options out there that reduce cash, and these options are not restricted to first-time buyers, and they're not restricted to folks who don't have money. Like, there are many folks with assets who reducing the amount needed to get into a home is a smart idea, for people with assets too. So here's the final point, very important. The way to find out about this stuff and what really applies for you and what's best is to find a great consulting lender that's licensed in the market where you're looking for a home. And really to do this research before you get into too much of a home ownership or budget decision about what you're going to buy, because there really are incredible options out there. So if you're someone who has either felt an obstacle around the cash needed to own a home, or if you're someone who has assets but just doesn't want to part with them for different reasons, the best thing you can do is find a great consulting lender in the market where you're looking to help you with that. If you need help with that, you can let us know at financialpro.info. We can give you some referrals for folks to talk to. Financialpro.info. If you could just hit that real quick, 2 quick feedback questions, take just a second. You can request the other things if you want for free. And that's our tidbit for today. Thanks.